Notre Dame blasted in another national championship game. Was Brian Kelly really the problem? It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. LSU's offered a 2026 tight end. We got a way too early 2025 top 25 with the 2024 season now over. But let's begin with the national championship game. And I want to be clear before I go any further. This is not a referendum on Marcus Freeman or the Notre Dame football players that tried very hard, made it a very competitive game by the end against Ohio State. This is not in any way a commentary on them. I think the Notre Dame coaching staff did a great job with this team. I think these players played very hard for their school, for their coaches, for themselves, their families, all that stuff. So can we be very clear about that? This is not what I'm about to say is not in any way a commentary on these coaches or players at Notre Dame. Good? Okay. Notre Dame played in another national championship game and got absolutely walloped. And don't you dare come here today and try to tell me anything to the contrary. If you try to tell me, hey, man, it was a close game, it was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, shut up. I have no tolerance whatsoever for you today. None. I don't want to hear it. Notre Dame took if you have two eyes in your head and air in your lungs and you watch that football game, you know that was an absolute curb stomping. Ohio State grabbed Notre Dame by the hair and dragged them through the street. Notre Dame threw everything they had in that first drive. Went 18 plays, shoot up 10 minutes, went up 7-0. What did Ohio State do? They yawned their way right down the field and scored the equalizing touchdown. 11 plays, 75 yards, 6:05. It's tied at 7. And what happened? From that point, Ohio State scored 31 unanswered points. It was 31-7 midway through the third quarter. And Notre Dame kept trying, to their credit, but Ohio State was doing whatever they could to just get home and have their ticker tape parade. Notre Dame on the first drive of the game, 18 plays, 75 yards. The rest of the first half, 7 plays, 3 yards. Kick rocks if you're trying to tell me this was a competitive game. It was not. Notre Dame got kicked in the head up and down the field the rest of the day. Ohio State could have hung 50 on Notre Dame if they wanted. They're up 31-7. They go to sleep. Notre Dame scores on a busted play, 2-point conversion. Yawn. Ohio State's about to score again. Emeka Egbuka fumbles. And then Notre Dame scores because nobody cared. And Ohio State's trying to run at the clock. God bless Marcus Freeman, down 16, attempted a field goal in the fourth quarter, down 16. What are you doing? What's that going to do? Put you down still 2 touchdowns? come on. Someone was like, well, it takes away the 2 points. Shut up. He was trying to make it look better aesthetically. You're down 16 at the 9-yard line and you attempt a field goal in the fourth quarter. Kid doinked it. He deserved it. That was football karma. The bottom line is, if you watch that football game, you know what you saw. I know what I saw. Another Notre Dame team in a big spot got their head kicked in. Couldn't compete. The same way that Brian Kelly's Final Four playoff team, college football playoff teams, couldn't compete against Clemson in 2018 and Alabama in 2020. Same way they couldn't compete against Alabama in 2012 in the BCS championship game. Why? Because it's Notre Dame. So listen, I want to be clear again. It's not a commentary on Marcus Freeman, that coaching staff, or those players. This is for LSU fans to understand this. This is Locked on LSU. I'm talking to LSU fans. This is why I'm telling you this story. The day Brian Kelly got hired, Notre Dame fans said, good riddance. Their objective all along was the reason that Notre Dame couldn't get over the hump was Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly was a lazy recruiter. Brian Kelly was a bad big game coach. Brian Kelly, blah, 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 blah. Brian Kelly. That was always Brian Kelly. Never mind the fact that since Lou Holtz won the national championship in 1988, after Lou Holtz in 1994, there were only 2 10-win seasons until Brian Kelly showed up in 2010. Charlie Weiss had one of them, and they got their head kicked in by LSU in the Sugar Bowl. And Bob Davie. No, forgive me. It wasn't even Bob Davie. It was Tyrone Willingham. Anyway, the point being, those Notre Dame teams couldn't hang on the biggest stage. Brian Kelly shows up, and 7 of his 12 seasons, he wins double digits. Gets Notre Dame to a BCS championship game, gets Notre Dame to a 14 playoff twice. And what happened every time? They got their head kicked in. The same way Marcus Freeman's team did tonight. Why? It's a Notre Dame problem. When you go 40 years without winning a natty, and every significant game you play, you get your head kicked in. That's not a Brian Kelly problem. That's a Notre Dame problem. And until Notre Dame is willing to go all in, admissions, NIL, everything, spend $20 million on a roster like Ohio State did. Not even SEC, not LSU. The Ohio State team that just curb stomped Notre Dame. Until you're willing to do what they did, you can't compete with them. All this to say, if you're an LSU fan sitting here today going, is Brian Kelly really the guy to win the big game? Consider the fact that for 3 decades, Notre Dame did nothing on the national stage until Brian Kelly willed that program to that level and then handed a team that finished 5th in the country to Marcus Freeman. And as we talked about a couple of episodes ago right here, when he left and handed Marcus Freeman the 5th-ranked team in the country, he also angered Notre Dame fans so much that guys like Brady Quinn started calling on Notre Dame alums to funnel money into, let's build facilities, let's do NIL. Giving Notre Dame resources Brian Kelly never had. And what happened? They still came up short because it ain't enough. Y'all, you can look at this game however you want, but you know good and well. We can look at this game and go, 454 to 308 in total yardage. I'll look at the rushing yardage and go 214 to 53. This was a Notre Dame team that tried to run the football. Couldn't. 26 carries for 53 yards. This game was a joke. It wasn't close because Notre Dame is not capable of competing for a national championship with the best teams in the country until they invest the resources. That's something they never did, which is why Brian Kelly's teams fell short. It wasn't a Brian Kelly problem. It was a Notre Dame problem. Do you realize Ohio State fans were ready to run Ryan Day out of town 1 month ago because they lost to Michigan again? And what happens a month later? They win the national championship. Why? Because they put $20 million into that roster and were good enough to beat Tennessee and were good enough to run through this playoff and win the national championship. And here we are. Here we are. With Ohio State hoisting another trophy, Notre Dame scratching its head wondering, man, why can't we win a championship? All that to say, if you're an LSU fan, rest assured that no matter what Notre Dame people might have told you, no matter what the national media says about Brian Kelly, the issues with why Notre Dame couldn't get over the hump when Brian Kelly was there were not Brian Kelly issues. They were, are, and will continue to be Notre Dame issues. So you have a coach, LSU fans, that took that program from doing nothing nationally for 20 years and got them into a BCS championship game and 2 14 playoffs, which, by the way, Marcus Freeman's team this year wouldn't have even been in. They would not have made a 14 playoff this year. And got them close, and they fell short. Okay? So it is plausible to think, what if you give the coach that went to Notre Dame and got that program with limited resources closer than any other coach in 2 decades? What if you give that coach resources? What can he do? Well, guess what? We're about to find out, because you just landed a top 10 high school signing class, the #1 portal class in the country. You've got your 5th-year senior quarterback who just threw for 5,000 yards coming back for another season. We're about to find out. I'm not saying LSU's going to win the Natty in 2025. What I'm telling you is Brian Kelly is a good coach who's got a loaded gun in 2025, more so than any Notre Dame team he ever coached. Now, the jury's still out. And the only way we will ever look at Brian Kelly's tenure in Baton Rouge as a success is if he wins the last game and is holding up the golden waffle cone. That's it. It's the only way we will ever look at it as a success. Anything other is an unmitigated failure. You paid that man $95 million over 10 years with 90% of that contract guaranteed, and he is here for one reason: win the last game. And I ain't talking about the Texas Bowl. So Brian Kelly don't get a pass, all right? You had Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. You had the best offense in the country. You didn't win a national championship in 2023 because Brian Kelly made an atrocious defensive coordinator hire with Matt House. That's Brian Kelly's fault. But that's not because he don't have the resources. He made a bad hire. Now, I think he's got it right with Blake Baker. I think he's got it right with his coaching staff, and I believe he's got it right with his roster. In the same way that Ohio State just spent $20 million on a roster to win a Natty, LSU's positions itself similarly for 2025. Let's see if they can go do it. But the one big takeaway from the national championship game, if you're an LSU fan, the one big takeaway is understanding every bit of noise and chirping from Notre Dame people about Brian Kelly's a lazy recruiter. Brian Kelly can't win the big game. It was never a Brian Kelly problem. It was, is, and will forevermore be a Notre Dame problem. And Monday's national championship game was further proof. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. For the first time and from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. FanDuel app, it's easy to navigate. The variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your earnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I have a feeling that LSU fans are really going to enjoy lurking this offseason. Let me tell you what I mean. I don't mean this to be a dig. This is just a symptom and reality of the national media. The national media doesn't have the luxury of going both wide and deep, right? So like I cover LSU, so I know a ton about LSU. Like I can tell you the third string right tackle, where he went to high school, his star rating, everything, right? Like I know a ton about one team. And I have a general knowledge and pretty deep knowledge of the entire SEC. If you start asking me like, who was the main injury on BYU's team this year, I'm going to probably be a little short on that. National media people don't have a deep knowledge of any team. They just have a surface knowledge of every team. And so sometimes there are pretty obvious things to you and me that they miss. So now that the 2024 college football season is over, every media outlet nationally is putting out their way too early top 25 rankings for 2025. And let me just kind of give you an illustration of where many have LSU. Now, I'll give Brett McMurphy credit. Brett McMurphy of the Action Network has LSU 5th in the country in his way too early top 25 rankings. He gets it. And this isn't a Homer LSU moment. Some of you are going to think that, but I'll let me give this. I'll come back and explain why, because I think I have a comp for LSU and why they are what they are and where they should be. Mark Schlabach at ESPN has his way too early rankings. He's got Ohio State 1, Texas 2, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Oregon, Clemson, and then there's LSU at 8. Followed by BYU, South Carolina at 10. Bama's down at 12. If you're looking for the rest of the SEC teams, he's got ranked. He's got Florida at 18. A lot of people are going to think they'll do well with DJ Lagway. Tennessee, a playoff team this year, he's got at 19. A&M at 22. And that rounds out the SEC teams. Ole Miss at 25. So keep in mind, Ole Miss at 25, A&M at 22, Tennessee at 19. Some teams that spent a lot of money this year, pretty far down. Some fella named Nick Bromberg over at Yahoo has LSU at 22 in his way too early top 25. Florida at 21, Missouri at 20, A&M at 17, South Carolina 13, Ole Miss at 10, Bama at 9. Take this guy's credential away. Tennessee at 7, Texas at 5. He's got Georgia preseason number 1. Take that guy's credential away. The 24/7 way too early top 25. This is from Brad Crawford. Has LSU. He's got Texas 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon 5, Clemson 6, Notre Dame 7, Alabama 8. God bless. Tennessee 9, and LSU at 12, one spot behind South Carolina. God bless these people picking Alabama. Like, what did you think? We just watched Alabama have a 4-loss season where they lost as a double-digit favorite 3 times. And now you're losing Jalen Milroe and all of your defensive talent, and they're going to be better? Hey, Nick Saban's gone. Like, what are you doing? Anyway, coming into this season, if you're looking for a comp for what LSU is, look at teams returning a veteran quarterback and spend a lot of money in the portal. Okay? Who had veteran quarterbacks this year? Well, Will Howard was a 5th-year player, just won the national championship. Dylan Gabriel was a 5th-year quarterback, undefeated number 1 team in the country, lost to the eventual national champion. Ole Miss, they finished 9-3, 10-3. They won their bowl game, but 9-3 in the regular season. Jackson Dart was there, spent a ton of money in the portal. Quite honestly, just inexcusable. It's bad coaching. Lane Kiffin's not a great head coach. Great offensive coach, not a good head coach, which is why they weren't in the playoff this year. You see my point? Notre Dame, Riley Leonard, super senior quarterback. You understand my point? Just look at the teams that had great success, and there's an underlying obvious synergy among them all. You had talented veteran quarterbacks. So LSU has its super senior quarterback returning for his 5th year, off a year where he just threw for 4,000 yards, and you just outspent everybody in the portal and have the number 1 transfer portal class. When you go back to last year and look at either the best portal classes by in totality average or by the average ranking of the players they signed, Ole Miss, Ohio State were at the top of everybody's list. So now you got an LSU team with a 5th-year senior quarterback returning who just threw for 4,000 yards, and you signed the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. LSU is 2025's Ohio State, Notre Dame, Ole Miss. When I look at the rest of those teams, I mean, are we really sold that Arch Manning is the second coming? Maybe he will be. Hasn't shown it. Ole Miss is losing. I would say Ole Miss, Ohio State are 2025's Florida State. The teams that went all in on the portal, like Florida State did in 2023, had the undefeated season, unfortunate injury. All those guys were gone, and they face planted. I'm not telling you Ole Miss, Ohio State, those teams are going to have the worst season in the history. I'm not telling you like the worst season since Florida State was an all-girls college. But what I'm telling you is you don't lose all of your starters without missing a beat. It was my same point about Alabama going into this year. So, I mean, as the sample size grows in this portal era, we're learning more. And what we're learning very clearly is you got a veteran quarterback and you spend a lot of money in the portal, you're going to be pretty good. LSU's got a veteran quarterback, spend a lot of money in the portal. And whoever that fella is at Yahoo who has LSU like preseason 21 or whatever, he's going to look like a damn fool at the start of next year. Now, another team that's got a veteran quarterback returning a talented roster is Clemson. LSU's got to open up there. The difference is Clemson added 3 players in the portal. Is it enough? I don't think so. Might it be enough on that August 30th game in Clemson? We'll find out. But boy, I think LSU's poised to be a team that not only should be in the playoff, but should be making a deep run in the playoff, depending on what the draw looks like next year. But anything, I'm telling you right now, anything short of LSU being in the 12-team playoff next year is a cataclysmic failure. with what you have coming back and what you spent to have coming in, if you are not in the playoff next year, abject failure. And there's a very legitimate question of if Brian Kelly can ever get this team to a playoff and to a championship. I think they'll be in the playoff next year. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. And now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. So here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players. And if your pick hits, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right. 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. As we put a button here on this episode of Locked On LSU, keep an eye on the name Luke Sorensen. So Luke Sorensen is a 2026 tight end out of Servite, California. He's a 3-star. He is 6'4", 230. He was in Baton Rouge this past weekend with his family on an unofficial visit. And during that visit, Brian Kelly and the LSU staff offered him a scholarship. Now, I often say I'm not so much worried about your star rating. I'm more worried about who offered you. That's more telling to me as to what type of prospect you are. Well, this is a guy with offers from Ole Miss and Missouri and Florida and UCLA. He's got big-time offers, and of course now LSU. And if Brian Kelly and his staff are offering a tight end, I'm good. I'm good. We can look at Kamorian Pimpton and Connor Gilbreth and Mac Markway and Jackson McGowan and say, the hit rate's not very high. And what I would tell you is those are guys in this era that just didn't want to wait their turn. I'd look at a guy like Mason Taylor, who is a 3-star out of the state of Florida, who Brian Kelly said, I can work with that. Brought him in, molded him, became the best tight end in the history of LSU's program, 3 years off to the NFL. I can look at Brian Kelly's dozen years in South Bend and say that dude knows exactly what he's doing and what he's looking for in tight ends. And look at the development Trades Green made this year. You bring in both Bauer Sharp and Donovan Green out of the transfer portal. You're bringing in J.D. LaFleur. I like a lot of what LSU is doing at tight end. And, of course, LSU is going to feature the tight end in this offense. So you look at a guy like Sorensen, and again, you just extended an offer. You didn't get a commitment. So there's a long way to go for this one. But 6'4", 230, a guy that just finished his first semester of his junior year in high school, a guy that's still got another semester and then a senior year, that's a guy that makes a lot of sense. And when you start to look at what the tight end room is going to look like at LSU, in 2025, you got 4 guys, right? You got Trades Green, Donovan Green, Bauer Sharp, the Oklahoma transfer, and J.D. LaFleur. That's 4 scholarship tight ends that you have. Well, you're going to lose Bauer Sharp after 2025. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. So when you look at 2026, Trades Green is a junior. Donovan Green will have another year of eligibility to return if he wants it. J.D. LaFleur will be in his second year. Well, if you're able to add a 2026 tight end, there's your 4. And now you're also bringing in a guy who can grow and develop in your offense the same way Mason Taylor did. You're not asking a true freshman to come in immediately. And because you've supplemented the portal, you don't have to go back into the portal to get immediate contributors. You should be good both with veteran guys and young guys coming behind them. So just a name to keep an eye on there as LSU's getting ready for 2026. Luke Sorensen out of the state of California, a 2026 tight end that has the LSU offer. We'll see if he becomes a member of the LSU class. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. And please let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.